Yes, Vikki McLachlan from the Jerusalem Trust, one of 17 Sainsbury family charitable trusts. My trustees grant about $4 million a year solely to Christian projects. We work in 5 areas, so education, particularly RE, media, Christian broadcasters in the UK and overseas, and we also have our own production company. Overseas, we do a little bit of development and mission work, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Art, mostly for commissions of art, works in places of worship. And then evangelism and mission, which is basically everything else. Good works. We do a lot with young people. We do a lot in prisons, but everything that doesn't fit into another category fits into evangelism and mission generally. So that's our category areas. We mostly work with national organisations. At least regional anyway. We rarely do local. We rarely do very new, but rules are fair to be broken. And we always say, as everyone has said this morning, if you don't ask, you definitely won't get anything. And I've done that in under 2 minutes. So, Genevieve.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for welcoming me here again today. It's good to be with you. So I'm the grants manager that manages what we call our Christian Projects Grants Programme at Henry Smith Charity, although I also work on our main grants programme, and I'll say a bit more about the difference between those two things in a moment. And I've been at Smiths for about 12 years now. But that is a blink of an eye compared to the age of the charity that I work for, because as David said, we are reasonably venerable. We've been around for almost 400 years. Henry was a 17th century salt trader, and also a bit of a control freak. You know how it goes. So usually someone of his wealth when they died would have left their money to their livery company, like the salters in his case. But Henry had very clear ideas about what he wanted his money to do after he died, so he wrote a really detailed will. And that will was the foundation of the charity that I now work for, so it's a pretty extraordinary legacy. And in that will, he wanted to pay the ransoms of Barbary slaves, so people who are being taken off the south coast by Turkish pirates, to support his poor kindred, they were his sister's family and their descendants, and to support the maintenance and furtherance of godly preachers and religion. And that last one is the source of the programme that I support, the Christian Projects Grants Programme. So we have a significant amount of funding. We have about £28 million. Most of that money goes to our main grants programme, which is a programme that looks broadly at marginalisation, deprivation, issues of access to services for individuals across the UK. And all of that work is non-promoting of religion in its focus. So it's all social justice, social action work, project work within communities, and none of it promotes religion. We don't fund anything that promotes religion in that programme. So that's our main grants programme, where most of our money goes. We also have the Christian Projects Grants Programme, which is explicitly about evangelism. So we've got these two programmes that are very separate from one another. And the Christian Projects Grants Programme has 4 priorities. One of them is reaching out to people who are unchurched. One of them is supporting people who have cognitive impairment. One of them is supporting older people in their spirituality and faith development, and one of them is supporting Anglican clergy. So those are our 4.
Very, very good thing to do.
An application from you lately, David. We have a budget of around about £400,000 a year for that, so it's quite small in relation to our overall grant making. Our trustees are interested in getting the maximum bang for their buck, so they're interested in work that can evidence it's got track record, positive outcomes, and sometimes we're willing, as he said, to take some risks and to try something that might be a little bit unusual if we've got faith in the individuals delivering that piece of work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very clear, really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the welcome. Good morning, everybody. The first thing I'd like to say is it's lovely to be back in a rank building. You heard a wee bit about the Million Guinea Appeal Fund this morning, which ran from 1899 to 1904. But as experienced fundraisers, you know that some of these appeals sort of dry up and come to a standstill before. So with regard to the Million Guinea Fund, our founder gave the last instalment of 40,000 guineas. You're actually sitting now on what was the site of the Royal Aquarium, which was purchased in 1909, and this building opened in 1912. Unfortunately, there were 23 plot holders that the building was built on, but our founder bought them out in 1923 for £72,000 and gave the freehold to the church. And the last rank bit, if you look up at the balcony, I don't know if anyone's up there, they're the tipping seats from Odeon Cinemas. So it's nice to be in a rank building. Joseph Rank, the primitive Methodist, the Christian philanthropist, the successful businessman. He founded this trust in 1917, and the principal object is completely unchanged from his original vision, which was to advance the Christian faith and further the kingdom of God. Today, 101 years later, the Trust achieves this by our grant-making program, which is both capital and revenue funding. We're an independent Christian grant maker, not tied into any church body or church group. So we are denominationally blind. So don't be shy if you're a Welsh Presbyterian, Assemblies of God, Frontier Trust, or even the Free Church of Scotland, which I'm going to see in Benbecula next week. Give you an idea of scale, last year we received 450 applications. The trustees made 90 grants worth 2.6 million. All our money is for projects in the United Kingdom. The first application I had after last year's conference was building schools in Zambia. So do focus on the geography if you're going to apply to us. Now, talking of apply to us, I'm going to start off by saying do not apply to us. Do not apply to the Rank Trust. If your church or charity has a high level of undesignated or unrestricted free reserves being held back desperately by your treasurer for a rainy day. Because if you're applying to us, it's because it's raining. Do not apply to us until you have read our website. That's ranktrust1word.org. Don't read it once, read it twice. And it does invite you at the end of the guidance on the homepage. If you're not sure, just pick up the phone and ring me. There is only me. Or drop me an email. If you've snuck in to this session thinking about a building project, you probably should be somewhere else. But if you have, don't apply to if you don't know the difference between the nice-to-haves and the must-haves. Nice-to-haves are things like stained glass, bells, new organs, glass partitions, engraved, of course. We do toilets, we do kitchens, we do disabled access, we do heat and light. And the last thing, fundraisers, is do not apply to us if you have a sense of entitlement to other people's money. If none of the above applies to you, we're very welcome to consider your application. Ranktrust.org, there's a page called Applying for Grants, and it's all there. So when you've read it twice, you'll be crystal clear. At the end of this session, I will be hanging around, probably by the piano in the corner. So if you've got any individual queries and you want to ask me a focus question, I'm happy to discuss that. Thank you.
So yes, my name's Charlie Laing, one of the building family. Worked for the family company for a number of years, and I'm now a trustee of 2 of our 8 family trusts. So not quite as many as Sainsbury, but more confusingly, they are all called something to do with Lange. So we didn't have the sense to name them more individualistically. The 2 particular ones that I sit on are the Morrison Hilda Laing Charitable Trust and the Beatrice Laing Trust. Our particular remit for both of those trusts is the relief of poverty, and that's worldwide, but with particular focus here in the UK and Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and the furtherment of the evangelical Christian religion. The other trusts do cover various other different things, so if you are looking us up and what you want support for is outside of that remit, there may be another part of the family that's able to help, but that's the bit that I can speak for. As a trustee, I have to be careful today not to support any particular project, I'm afraid, because there are 6 to 8 other trustees on board with me, and all our decisions are group decisions. So the process for us is an application, and I would say the same as John, please go read our website, and that's the langfamilytrust.org. Understand whether what we're asking for meets what you want. Don't worry about which particular trust you're applying to. Our fantastic administrators will sort out which particular trust is relevant to you. They will do an initial audit on what you submit. They will help you if the application process is not quite complete. They will tell you what additional paperwork they would like to see. And if your application looks as though it's going to be of interest, they will bring it forward to a trustee meeting where I will get to see it. What I would say is there are a few things that we won't be supporting. So we don't support animal charities, for example. We don't support church fossilization projects. Okay? So if you want to just improve the building, then that's not us. Okay? What we do like is to hear how, when you improve the building, what you're going to use it for, and how it's going to grow the congregation, and how your vicar is really energized by the potential project, and how your bishop is on board and supportive of it, and how it fits within his or her area plan. We do find project-based funding easier to understand than core funding, but I wouldn't rule out core funding. It's just you need to explain what it is that you're particularly going to be doing with that core. For me particularly, I like social cohesion projects. So something about bringing people together, working within a community, and getting those who are excluded or on the margins brought back into being valued members of our society. I also very much like projects that can go on to win awards at the Christian Funders Forum. And if you haven't heard of it, we had our awards just the other week. Go and look up who won awards and what the categories were, and see how you can apply and make sure that you're coming forward next year. If you are applying for a church project, then I am in the building industry, and I will be looking at how much your professional fees are and what level of specification your project is coming forward with. Because similar to what John has said, very often we see particular church projects coming with very high specifications. Those are lovely. Are they necessary? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So we are one of 4 lottery distributors, and what that means in reality is when somebody buys a lottery ticket, the income of that is distributed amongst ourselves, Sport England, the Arts Council and Heritage Lottery Fund. We suspect buying a lottery ticket, the primary purpose of that for most people is not good causes, but the income that it generates nevertheless is something to be celebrated. The National Lottery Fund is one of many distributors, as I've said, and our scale and scope is broad and vast. So in the UK alone last year, we distributed over £500 million, and in England we distributed £350 million. And it's everything from a few £100 to multi-million-pound grants. So why do we exist? We exist because we want people and communities to thrive and to make the most of their lives. We want people to have agency, and we want to be able to fund things that matters to people and to communities. And in England, we have 3 broad funding priorities. One is around early action and prevention. And I borrow a phrase from the Early Action Funders Alliance, where they say it's better to build fences at the top of a cliff than have the ambulance waiting at the bottom. So it's how do we respond 2 steps sooner? How do we stop things from escalating and spiraling? Or how can we stop things from worsening? We also focus and have a priority on relationships. It's very telling that we live in a society where we have a government minister this year appointed for loneliness. We did a joint programme with government this year on loneliness, and at one time we had an application coming in every minute. We also look to fund places and spaces that matter to people and communities, be that a community allotment, a park, a community centre, or an online space. We have 3 main funding programmes, so anything from £300 up to £10,000. We have our main programme, Reaching Communities, which is £10,000, really up to £500,000, and partnership funding, where we recognise that organisations and charities working together can achieve more than any singular organisation alone. We do fund Christian charities for secular outcomes, and over the last 5 years we have awarded over £35 million to Christian charities. So I wanted to offer a few words of advice while I was here. So firstly, it's very easy for people to be able to come to us and say what they do, but we're really interested in why you do it. The ability to be able to say we're going to do X because we believe it will have the following outcomes and make a difference to people's lives and the communities we serve is incredibly important and the forefront of our minds. Secondly, we know from years of experience that involving people, meaningfully involving them in both the design of projects, the delivery of them, and the governance of them is absolutely critical, and the most successful projects are those who have involved people right the way through. And thirdly, I would ask you to consider the local landscape in which you are operating. We don't want to fund X project where there is Y project operating a mile down the road. So being aware of what local provision is providing and understanding how you fit into that is really important. Thank you. It doesn't affect the application. So as I say, we fund many, many Christian charities. Yes. Yeah. For us, it's more to do with the outcomes of a project. We are prohibited from funding the promotion, yes, the direct promotion of faith. But we do fund many faith-based organisations.
Thank you. That's really clear, Sacha. And finally, I'd like to add a word from the All Churches Trust. James Lange, who is down below at the moment with the churches, has said that he'd really like to communicate the fact that the All Churches Trust, which is owned by ecclesiastical insurance, to which our church gives most of its money, and is very well endowed as a result, is actually it's a very big funder. And they are keen to fund Christian charities increasingly, as well as the many church projects they fund. Initial comment. Yes, thank you, Sacha.
Did I lean sufficiently?
You did, perfectly.
I hear you, and I think for me it's about funders are, well, I think the Big Lottery Fund is a proportionate funder. We recognise that proportionality has to come in the degree of impact and reporting that's available as well. We recognise that there are short-term immediate outcomes, and for lots of things, social change takes a really long time sometimes, and we're fully prepared to embrace that. Also that there is a mix of different ways of reporting, be it quantitative and qualitative, be it hard data, the stories of people's lives that matter along the way. So sometimes it's about reporting on incremental steps rather than the big bang at the end.
Just a general point from the first gentleman. Not every funder, particularly not this one, wants instant results. I think that's a bit of a myth, actually. The Rank Trust, we have a track record for investing into charities that have no guaranteed outcomes. None at all. But you may have heard of the Alpha program, and you may have heard of CAP. They got their first grants from us. But at the time, no one knew whether there'd be a success or whether it would not. So I'll just make that general point to you. The intentional health point, as a previous funder of intentional health, I would encourage my colleagues to look closely. It's that tension between being churchy or non-churchy, you know. And when I go and visit the charities that we fund, and we visit everybody we fund, potentially, I talk about packaging, because the bulk of the money is with the secular funders, it isn't with the Christian funders. Charlie mentioned the Christian Funders Forum, christianfundersforum.org, a collection of trusts, 30 million a year between us. But Esme Fairbairn, Tudor, and so on are doing more than that on their own. So I would say to people like Intentional Health, who've got that debate about churchy, non-churchy, just say, really, what are you bringing to the table of the beneficiary, the community? Who are you reaching out to? The unemployable, the mentally ill, the invisible, the lonely. Tracy was a fantastic minister for loneliness, and she put a lot of money behind that issue. I think the last point, the gentleman from Kent, I think you need to look locally. There's a whole raft of funders called community foundations.
Yes, yeah.
And every county, I live in Sussex, and the Sussex Community Foundation is amazing. And also the landfill trusts and the wind farm trusts, very generous. Look carefully at their websites. Go to entrust.org.
I think there is no blanket answer, because every application is unique, so it depends on what the outcome is. For us, it is all about the outcome. It's about what will be achieved with the funding. But because of the nature of our funding, we have to be open and available to all. So if a project can demonstrate that actually not being a Christian wouldn't be a barrier to
being a beneficiary, yes.
Or a beneficiary,
yes.
and it is open to all, then that's something that we look to see.
Sure. What I'd say is, obviously, you've got great projects, and you've got a description of those projects, and you'd like to use that description to as many people as possible. But I'm afraid that you're going to have to tailor a certain amount of that to the particular person that you're applying to. So you know that we like relief of poverty and furtherment of Christian religion. So in your application to us, you need to be spelling out to us how your application is going to meet those things that we want to achieve. And if in intentional health you can do that and explain how you're going to be relieving poverty, then it's viable. If it's just a health project, then it doesn't fit. So there is a degree of bespoking that you're going to have to do depending on who you're applying to. So on the Laing family trusts, the application process is to the whole of the organisation, as it were, and we'll sort out who it might be relevant to. So it may be that you're interpreting that don't apply to the individual trust because actually we just want an application to LFT, as we call it. Yeah. There are different sizes of grant giving within the different family trusts. So what we call as family a second generation trust has a lot less money to give away than the first generation trusts. So they will not respond probably to a second generation trust will not respond to you individually. It's not worth trying to write to a Martin Laing Foundation, a David Laing Foundation, a Chris Laing Foundation Trust. Don't worry about all of that. Just approach the Laing Family Trust generally, and we'll sort you out from there.
Probably got 5 different answers along this table, to be honest. For me, it's quite helpful actually. If you have a conversation with the trustee and they want to then bring it to a meeting, that's kind of half of my work done. My trustees will be very clear that they can't say yes or no if it's something they know they need to bring to the table more widely. So for me, it's a fairly straightforward process, but I imagine others would prefer a little more distance.
I mean, I think our trustees work on a quite strategic basis, and on the basis that my job is to give you advice about applying to us, the best thing to do is to ring up and ask to speak to me to get advice about applying to us, I think. So, and also on the basis of equity, we'd appreciate you coming through the office rather than going through our trustees.
Well, I'm going to lead on it by saying it's not one of our current areas of consideration. We have 12 areas of social justice on our website, which leave with asylum seekers, prisoners, homeless, prostitution, youth work, special needs, disabled, and so on. And that is the priority that was embedded in the founder's vision that is unchanged. And the family, I have 5 blood-related trustees to the founder, they are custodians of that vision. And it is their duty to, as they see it, to engage with those beneficiaries first. Fundraisers' fees, I think was the first question. We tend to work with locally based projects that are embedded in their local communities who have 5 employees or 5 FTEs and a large bank of volunteers. And generally speaking, those charities cannot afford the fees. Saying that, there are good Christian funders out there, but actually, when you apply to us, there's no form to fill in, there's no online exercise with tiny little boxes with loaded questions, not that we do it, but other people. We invite you to fill in 2 sides of A4, telling it from the heart. And that passion, that commitment, and that knowledge generally comes from people who engage on a daily basis with the beneficiaries. Now, last year, our 90 successful applications, 7 out of 10 were invited by the secretary to resubmit their application, because we get it. We get that you are there to put your hand out to the beneficiary and give them love and support. You may not be there to write highly polished grant applications.
I think I'd largely agree. I think the question about whether your bid writer is worth their money is how integrated is that bid writer into your work.
Yeah.
Yes.
We get applications that I call the polo applications. So they've got a hole in the middle. And that hole is the passion and the heart and the knowledge of the work. So it looks shiny and perfect, effectively, but it's not. It lacks the heart and the passion. And we can smell that a mile off. And they're not likely to get through. So we'd rather have something that's less polished, that genuinely talks about the needs of the people that you work with, that generally talks about the outcomes that you're looking to see, and is from the perspective of someone who is passionate about the work. So we would rather that than something that looks shiny. I think there's definitely a need for structure, and there's a need to make an argument, and you know, it may be that a bid writer isn't solely responsible for writing the bid by themselves, so you can get support from somebody to help you structure things in a way that makes sense to a funder, whilst not losing that core passion from you about the work. It can be a collaborative effort. I think the first thing to say is that the organisation has answered all of the questions on the application form. So it's answering the question that's being asked, not the question you hoped is being asked, but actually answering the question that's being asked. And we offer guidance on the sort of information we're looking for each of the questions that we're asking. So we're hoping that you've read that and understood it and are responding to it appropriately. We ask you to make a reasonable argument. So if we're asking you to sort of fill the box with so many words, then fill the box with that many words. There's that much to say about your work. There's a reason why we've said you've got, 100 words or 3,000 words. Don't give us a 2-sentence answer if we've asked you for lots and lots of information. You need to make it really clear what the need is that you're addressing. You need to make it really clear what your activities are going to be, so what you're practically going to do. What's your work plan? What's it going to look like? How many times a week will it take place? Where will it take place? Who's it going to involve? What other partners are involved in the delivery of that work as well? Where are you at in relationships in terms of onward referrals or inward referrals for the work? We need to understand what outcomes you're going to achieve. We need you to tell us how you're going to measure them. So coming back to this point about instant versus long-term results, we're not necessarily expecting you to have instant results, but we're looking for you to know what change you want to see happen and to have a system for measuring that along the way, because we want you to be interested in you seeing whether you've made a change happen. Presumably you're coming to work because you want to make a difference, and we want to know what that difference is and how you're going to track it, not just for us but for you, so you know whether you've made a difference. And then finally we need you to have a budget that adds up and makes sense, and is appropriate for the size of the project, and that you're supporting your staff appropriately with salaries, pensions, clinical supervision, those sorts of things if they need it, and that your accounts are in order as well. So I think that's probably the basics of what...
At the risk of being microphone being turned off, I'm going to give one plug to all you fundraisers. It's the Google bar for fundraisers. It's called GrantNav. It's run by 360 Giving. If you haven't discovered it, you should discover it. 360giving.org, GrantNav. If you want to find out mental health advocacy in Portsmouth for teenagers, put it in there and it will tell you all the data that is out there.